You're sitting across from an old friend at a restaurant. The waiter comes by, asks about drinks, and your friend orders a glass of red wine. You have not seen him in months. He looks good, relaxed, successful. He tells you the wine helps him unwind after long days, that his doctor actually mentioned something about heart benefits, that he never drinks more than a glass or two. You order water, and for a moment you feel like the uptight one, the one who cannot relax, the one missing out on something civilized and pleasurable. Later that week, you visit your father. He's sitting in front of the television with a bottle that is half empty, and it is only early afternoon. His hands shake slightly. His face has that redness you have noticed getting worse over the years. He tells the same story he told last time you visited, and the time before that. When you suggest he might be drinking too much, he gets defensive. He has been drinking like this for decades. His father drank. His friends drink. He can stop whenever he wants. He just does not want to. Two scenes. Two relationships with the same substance. One seems harmless, perhaps even beneficial. The other is clearly destroying a life. And somewhere between your friend's single glass of wine and your father's half-empty bottle lies a question that most people never examine carefully. What is alcohol actually doing inside the male body? Not in extreme cases, but in ordinary use, week after week, year after year. This is not a lecture about the evils of drinking. I am not here to moralize or to pretend that alcohol has not played a role in human culture for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks gave wine to their athletes. Knights drank before battle. Business deals are still sealed over drinks. Social bonds form around shared glasses. In many cultures, drinking is woven so deeply into tradition that refusing feels like rejecting the culture itself. I understand all of this. I participate in it myself occasionally. The goal here is not to eliminate alcohol from your life through guilt. The goal is to understand what it does so that you can make informed decisions about what you're willing to accept. Because here is the reality that rarely gets discussed honestly. Poison and medicine differ only by dose. This is an ancient principle, and it applies perfectly to alcohol. Small amounts may offer certain benefits, large amounts destroy. The line between them is not always clear, and most people have no idea where they personally stand on the spectrum between moderate use and slow self-destruction. Let me start by making an important distinction. There is a difference between someone who has a drink occasionally without dependence and someone who has developed a psychological or physical need for alcohol. These are not the same conditions, and treating them as identical helps no one. A person who enjoys a glass of wine with dinner twice a week and can easily go months without drinking is in a fundamentally different situation than someone who needs alcohol to feel normal, who experiences anxiety or physical symptoms when they cannot drink, who has developed tolerance so that amounts that once intoxicated them now barely register. Tolerance is one of the clearest warning signs. When you need more to feel the same effect, something has changed in your brain chemistry. Your body has adapted to a toxin by becoming less sensitive to it. This might feel like you're becoming better at handling your alcohol, but what has actually happened is that your natural warning system has been disabled. The hangover that used to stop you after 3 drinks no longer arrives after 5. The discomfort that signalled excess has been muted. You can drink more without immediate consequence, and so you do. This is not a sign of strength. It is a sign that addiction is developing. Loss of control is the line that separates problematic drinking from moderate use. If you can decide to have 1 drink and stop at 1, you retain control. If you consistently intend to have 1 and find yourself having 4, control is slipping away. If you cannot imagine a celebration without alcohol. If you need a drink to relax. If the thought of going a month without drinking creates anxiety. These are signals worth examining honestly. Not because having a drink is wrong, but because dependence operates invisibly until it does not. Understanding why people drink helps clarify what alcohol provides that people are seeking. The reasons are varied but predictable. Escape from reality, stress relief, social belonging, the desire to fit in at gatherings where everyone is drinking, the need to cope with illness or pain or life circumstances that feel overwhelming, emotional avoidance, the desire not to feel certain feelings that emerge when sober, and eventually for some pure addiction, where the drinking no longer serves any purpose except feeding a physical need the body has developed. For many men, alcohol provides something specific, artificial courage. After a drink or 2, anxiety decreases, fear softens, the nervousness that might have held you back in social situations fades. You talk more freely, you approach people more easily, You feel more like the version of yourself you wish you were all the time. This is not imagination. Alcohol genuinely does suppress anxiety, at least temporarily. It blocks certain receptors in the brain that generate feelings of fear and nervousness. The effect is real. But here is what rarely gets acknowledged. Confident people do not need this. A man who has developed genuine self-assurance, who has worked on his social skills, who has addressed the underlying sources of his anxiety, does not require chemical assistance to relax at a party. The alcohol is not creating confidence. It is masking the absence of confidence. And because the mask is so effective, many men never develop the real thing. They use alcohol as a permanent crutch rather than building the psychological strength that would make the crutch unnecessary. This matters because research has shown something that sounds paradoxical. Moderate drinkers often report higher happiness and stronger social bonds than non-drinkers. This has been used to argue that alcohol itself produces these benefits. But the relationship is more complicated. People who drink moderately are often doing so in social contexts, with friends, at celebrations, during bonding experiences. The happiness and connection may come from the socializing itself, with alcohol serving as the facilitator rather than the cause. A person who develops rich social connections without alcohol achieves the same benefits without the costs. The question is whether you are using alcohol to access social benefits you could access other ways, or whether you have become dependent on it as the only path to connection. Now let me explain what alcohol actually does when it enters your body, because understanding the mechanism helps clarify why the effects accumulate over time. When you drink, ethanol enters your bloodstream through your stomach and small intestine. It travels to your brain within minutes and begins affecting neurotransmitter systems. Specifically, alcohol blocks glutamate receptors. Glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter, meaning it increases brain activity. When glutamate is blocked, your central nervous system slows down. This is why alcohol is classified as a depressant, not because it makes you depressed emotionally, but because it depresses nervous system function. Thoughts slow, reflexes delay, inhibitions lower because the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for judgment and impulse control, is particularly sensitive to this suppression. At low doses, this creates relaxation and mild euphoria. You feel looser, warmer, more expansive. At moderate doses, coordination suffers, speech slurs, judgment impairs. At high doses, the depression of the central nervous system becomes dangerous. Balance is lost. Consciousness fades. At extremely high doses, the brainstem itself is suppressed, and breathing can stop. This is how alcohol kills acutely, by depressing the central nervous system so severely that basic life functions cease. The lethal dose varies person to person, and tolerance affects it significantly. Someone who never drinks might be dangerously intoxicated at levels that a chronic drinker barely notices. This is why tolerance is so dangerous. The gap between intoxication and death narrows as tolerance increases, because although your subjective experience requires more alcohol, your organs are still being poisoned at the same rate. You feel fine while your liver and brain absorb damage that would have stopped you earlier in your drinking career. The hangover that follows drinking is not just an inconvenience, it is your body's alarm system screaming that it has been poisoned. Alcohol is a diuretic, meaning it increases urination. This leads to dehydration and the loss of electrolytes, minerals your body needs for basic function. The headache, the nausea, the fatigue, the sensitivity to light and sound, these are withdrawal symptoms combined with the effects of dehydration and the toxic metabolites that alcohol produces as it breaks down. Your body is communicating something important. What you consumed was harmful, and the price must be paid. Men pay a particularly heavy price for alcohol consumption, though this reality is rarely emphasized in the messages they receive about drinking. Statistics show that alcohol is responsible for approximately 5% of all male deaths globally. Among men ages 15 to 49, the percentage is even higher, around 10%. These deaths occur through multiple pathways: heart attack, stroke, liver failure, accidents, violence, diabetes complications, thrombosis. Alcohol does not kill only through the dramatic scenes we imagine, the drunk driving crash or the alcoholic collapse. It kills quietly, through accumulated damage to organs and systems that fail years or decades after the drinking pattern began. Let me focus now on something central to male health that rarely gets discussed in the context of alcohol: hormones. because what alcohol does to testosterone alone should give every man pause. When you drink alcohol, your testosterone production decreases. This is not speculation or anti-alcohol propaganda. It is measured, documented, consistent across studies. The mechanism is direct. Alcohol interferes with the hormonal signaling pathway that tells your testicles to produce testosterone. It affects the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, disrupting the signals they send. It directly impairs the Leydig cells in the testes that actually manufacture testosterone. The result is less testosterone circulating in your blood. The effect is dose-dependent. A single drink may have minimal acute impact. A night of heavy drinking can suppress testosterone by a significant percentage, sometimes for days afterward. Chronic drinking creates chronic suppression. Men who drink regularly often have measurably lower testosterone than men who do not, even when the drinking does not rise to the level of what anyone would call alcoholism. This is the hidden cost of the casual drink, the nightly beer, the regular glass of wine. Each one contributes to a hormonal environment that undermines what makes you function as a man. Binge drinking is particularly damaging. When you consume large amounts in a short period, testosterone drops sharply. Studies have shown decreases of up to 25% in the days following a binge. The body recovers eventually if the binge is isolated, but how often is a binge truly isolated? For many men, the weekend pattern of heavy drinking means they spend a significant portion of their lives in a testosterone-suppressed state. They wonder why they feel tired, unmotivated, why their body composition shifts toward fat and away from muscle, why their drive and energy seem lower than they should be. The answer is sitting in their refrigerator or their bar cabinet. Alcohol also increases cortisol, the stress hormone. This makes physiological sense. Your body recognizes alcohol as a toxin and mounts a stress response to deal with it. Elevated cortisol promotes fat storage, particularly visceral fat around the midsection. It breaks down muscle tissue, it impairs recovery, it disrupts sleep. The very things men often drink to achieve, relaxation and stress relief, are undermined at the hormonal level by the substance they use to pursue them. You drink to relax, and your body becomes more stressed as a result. Prolactin also rises with alcohol consumption. This hormone, typically associated with breastfeeding in women, has effects in men that are generally undesirable. Elevated prolactin can suppress libido, impair sexual function, and contribute to the feminizing effects that chronic drinkers sometimes experience. The stereotypical image of the heavy drinker developing breast tissue and losing masculine body composition is not a stereotype without biological basis. There is a common belief that alcohol increases estrogen in men, feminizing them directly. The research on this is more nuanced than the popular narrative suggests. Alcohol does affect estrogen metabolism, and chronic drinking can shift hormone ratios in unfavorable ways, but the direct conversion of testosterone to estrogen through alcohol is not as straightforward as sometimes claimed. The more significant hormonal effects are the testosterone suppression and cortisol elevation I've already described. The estrogen question is more complicated and depends on factors including liver function, body fat levels, and the type and amount of alcohol consumed. Speaking of the liver, this organ deserves extended attention. The liver is your primary detoxification organ, processing not only alcohol but medications, environmental toxins, metabolic waste, and much more. When alcohol is present, the liver prioritizes its processing above almost everything else. Other functions are delayed or impaired, while the liver works to neutralize the ethanol in your blood. Chronic drinking damages the liver in stages. First comes fatty liver, the accumulation of fat within liver cells. This is reversible if drinking stops. Next comes alcoholic hepatitis, inflammation that begins to impair function. This is still often reversible but more serious. Finally comes cirrhosis, the replacement of healthy liver tissue with scar tissue. Cirrhosis is largely irreversible. Once scar tissue forms, it does not convert back to functioning liver cells. The liver can continue working with significant scarring, but its capacity is diminished, and further damage becomes more likely. Here is the remarkable thing about the liver, the detail that offers hope to anyone who stops drinking before cirrhosis develops. The liver regenerates. It is the only internal organ that can regrow significant portions of itself. In Greek mythology, Prometheus was punished by having an eagle eat his liver every day, and every night the liver grew back. The Greeks somehow intuited something medically accurate. If you stop drinking early enough, your liver can heal itself. Fatty liver can reverse, inflammation can resolve, function can return. But there is a window. Close that window by continuing to drink until cirrhosis develops, and the regenerative capacity cannot overcome the damage. The scarring becomes permanent. This regenerative capacity is not a license to abuse. It is a reason for hope if you decide to change. Men who have been drinking heavily for years can often achieve significant recovery of liver function if they stop. The key is stopping before the point of no return. The gut is another casualty of alcohol that deserves attention. Your intestinal lining is a barrier that should allow nutrients through while keeping toxins and bacteria out. Alcohol damages this barrier, creating what is often called leaky gut. When the barrier is compromised, substances that should stay inside the intestine leak into the bloodstream, triggering immune responses and chronic inflammation. The gut microbiome, the population of bacteria that supports digestion and immune function, is also disrupted by alcohol. This dysbiosis contributes to digestive problems, skin issues, immune dysfunction, and systemic inflammation. Even non-alcoholic beer affects the gut negatively, which surprises many people. The compounds in beer beyond alcohol itself have effects on gut bacteria and gut lining. Switching to non-alcoholic versions is not a complete solution if gut health is a concern. The gut is foundational to health. Its disruption ripples outward to affect virtually every other system. Muscle and athletic performance suffer significantly from alcohol consumption. Protein synthesis, the process by which your body builds and repairs muscle tissue, decreases by approximately 20% or more following alcohol consumption. Recovery slows, the adaptation to training that would normally occur is blunted. Professional athletes, for this reason, generally do not drink during competitive seasons. The ones who achieve the highest levels of performance recognize that alcohol is fundamentally incompatible with athletic excellence. You cannot pursue maximal physical development while regularly consuming a substance that directly impairs the processes required for that development. This is not about being extreme or puritanical. This is about understanding trade-offs. If you want to drink socially and accept somewhat slower progress in the gym, that is a legitimate choice. But if you are frustrated by lack of results despite training hard, alcohol consumption is worth examining as a potential cause. The effort you put in is being undermined by the drinks you consume afterward. Cancer risk is a topic that cannot be avoided in an honest discussion of alcohol. Alcohol is classified as a carcinogen, meaning it directly causes cancer. This is not controversial in the medical literature, though it rarely appears in alcohol marketing. Alcohol is linked to at least 7 types of cancer: mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, larynx, colon, and rectum. The risk increases with the amount consumed, but there is no clearly safe threshold. Even light drinking slightly elevates cancer risk compared to not drinking at all. When alcohol is combined with smoking, the risks multiply in ways that should terrify anyone who does both. The combination of alcohol and tobacco increases oral and esophageal cancer risk by factors that can reach 150 times or more, compared to someone who neither drinks nor smokes. The two substances work synergistically, each making the other more damaging. This is one area where moderation provides little protection. If you drink and smoke, even moderately, you're playing a lottery with odds that grow worse with every year of the habit. Mental health effects complete the picture of damage. Alcohol is a depressant, and while it temporarily numbs emotional pain, it worsens depression over time. The brain adapts to chronic alcohol exposure by reducing its natural production of pleasure and calm-inducing neurotransmitters. When you stop drinking, even temporarily, there is a deficit. You feel anxious, irritable, depressed, not because you're naturally that way, but because your brain chemistry has been altered. Many men drink to manage anxiety and end up with more anxiety than they started with, now also complicated by the physiological effects of withdrawal. Careers have been destroyed by this pattern. Relationships have ended, promising lives have derailed. The examples in the arts, in sports, in entertainment are countless. Talented people whose addiction gradually consumed everything they had built. But these famous examples are just the visible portion of a vast hidden epidemic. For every celebrity who destroys their life publicly, thousands of ordinary men do it privately, in homes and apartments where no one sees, where the gradual decline is witnessed only by family members who feel helpless to stop it. Now let me offer something hopeful, a timeline of what happens when you stop drinking. In the first 24 hours, your body begins the process of recovery. Your immune system, which alcohol suppresses, starts to reactivate. The detoxification process begins in earnest. Your liver shifts from processing alcohol to processing the backlog of other substances it has been neglecting. Between days 1 and 3, withdrawal symptoms may appear if you have been drinking heavily. Tremors, anxiety, sweating, difficulty sleeping. These symptoms are the brain and nervous system adjusting to the absence of a substance they had adapted to. They are uncomfortable, but temporary. For severe alcoholics, this period can be medically dangerous and should be managed with professional support. For moderate drinkers, the symptoms are milder or absent. By days 3 to 5, blood pressure begins to stabilize if it was elevated. Stress hormones start returning to normal levels. Appetite often improves, and the quality of food choices tends to get better when alcohol is not involved. Sleep may still be disrupted but is starting to normalize. At 1 week, visible changes often appear. The face looks less puffy, the skin looks clearer, the eyes look brighter. These are the effects of rehydration and reduced inflammation. People notice you look healthier, even if they do not know you stopped drinking. Between 2 and 3 weeks, the central nervous system continues to recover. The foggy thinking and emotional volatility of early withdrawal fade. Kidney function improves, energy levels rise, sleep quality gets significantly better as the brain relearns how to manage sleep cycles without alcohol interference. At 4 weeks and beyond, liver regeneration accelerates. If fatty liver was present, it is often measurably reduced by this point. The liver's detoxification capacity improves, meaning it processes other toxins more efficiently. Energy is substantially higher than during drinking days. Mental clarity improves, mood stabilizes. The version of yourself that alcohol was suppressing begins to emerge. This timeline is not the same for everyone. Chronic heavy drinkers may require more time. Those with existing damage may need months or years for full recovery. But the trajectory is clear and consistent. Stop drinking and the body heals. Continue drinking and the damage accumulates. There is no magic detox beyond this natural process. Products that promise to cleanse your liver or accelerate recovery are mostly marketing. Your body already knows how to detoxify itself. The best thing you can do is stop interfering with that process. Stop adding new toxins while the liver clears old ones. Hydrate adequately. Eat nutritious food. Allow the organs that were stressed to rest and repair. The detox is built into your biology. You just have to let it work. Let me address something painful. The difficulty of changing people you love. If you have a parent who drinks too much, a father or mother whose health is declining because of alcohol, you know how frustrating it is to watch. You offer information, they dismiss it. You express concern, they get defensive. You present evidence, they ignore it. This is not because they are stupid or because they do not love you. It is because addiction hijacks the brain's decision-making systems. It is because humans have enormous capacity to rationalize behaviors they are not ready to change. It is because hearing difficult truths from your children inverts the authority relationship in ways that feel uncomfortable. Parents are supposed to guide children, not receive lectures from them. Even when the lecture is obviously correct, accepting it means accepting a role reversal that many cannot tolerate. I have seen this pattern repeatedly. The adult child armed with facts and genuine concern. The parent who acknowledges the problem in abstract but refuses to change behavior. The cycle of hope and disappointment. The helplessness of watching someone you love harm themselves while being unable to stop them. What I can tell you is this: you cannot control another person's choices. You can share information. You can express love and concern. You can set boundaries about what you are willing to witness or support, but the decision to change belongs to the person drinking. Sometimes rock bottom is required before change becomes possible. Sometimes rock bottom is death, and change never comes. This is tragic, and it is reality. Your responsibility is to share truth with compassion, and then accept that the outcome is not in your hands. Here is another uncomfortable reality. Even serious medical diagnoses often fail to motivate change. I have spoken with doctors who describe patients continuing to smoke while being treated for lung cancer. Patients who drink while their livers fail. Patients who refuse dietary changes while taking ever-increasing medications for diabetes. The evidence is staring them in the face, literally threatening their lives, and still the behavior continues. This is not moral failure. This is how addiction works. This is how habits work. This is how human psychology works. Comfort beats logic. The immediate pleasure of the drink or the cigarette feels more real than the abstract future harm. The pattern will continue until something disrupts it forcefully enough to create a new pattern. Sometimes that disruption is a near-death experience. Sometimes it is the loss of a relationship. Sometimes it is a moment of clarity that arrives mysteriously and cannot be manufactured. I want to end with something balanced, because balance is what has been missing from most conversations about alcohol. I am not telling you never to drink. I am not pretending that moderate alcohol consumption will definitely destroy your life. For some people, a glass of wine with dinner, a beer at a gathering, a drink to celebrate, these fit into healthy lives without apparent harm. The research on moderate consumption shows some potential benefits, particularly for cardiovascular health, though even this is debated. The social benefits of shared drinking are real, even if they could be achieved through other means. The pleasure of a good drink with a good meal is real. I'm not dismissing any of this. What I am saying is that you should know what you are choosing, understand the effects, recognize that even moderate consumption affects testosterone, affects sleep, affects your liver, affects your gut, affects your cancer risk. Acknowledge that the line between moderate and problematic is blurry, and that most people who cross it did not intend to. Be honest about whether you're drinking because you enjoy it or because you need it. Notice if tolerance is building. Notice if you struggle to stop at one. Notice if life without alcohol has become difficult to imagine, and consider what you could have without it. Consider that the relaxation you seek is available through other means. Consider that the social confidence you access through alcohol could be developed naturally. Consider that the stress relief you find in a drink could be found in exercise, in meditation, in sleep, in addressing the sources of stress rather than numbing them. Consider that your testosterone, your liver, your gut, your cancer risk, your sleep, your mental health, your athletic performance, your longevity, all of these could be optimized by choosing differently. Better alternatives exist. Nutrition that supports mental health rather than undermining it. Omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammation rather than causing it. Supplements that support liver function rather than straining it. Exercise that builds the body rather than breaking it down. Sleep practices that restore rather than disrupt. Stress management that addresses causes rather than masking symptoms. You can have health without alcohol. Millions of people do. The question is whether the benefits you receive from drinking outweigh the costs you now understand you are paying. I cannot answer that question for you. Only you know your relationship with alcohol, your reasons for drinking, your ability to moderate, your willingness to change. What I can do is ensure you make the choice with full information rather than the partial information that our culture typically provides. Alcohol is woven into human history. It is celebrated, ritualized, normalized. It is also a toxin that damages virtually every system in the male body when consumed regularly. Both of these things are true. Holding them together is not hypocrisy. It is honesty. The choice is yours. Make it knowing what you now know.